The next topic is like really close to my lived experience as a person, because I am the oldest member of the From Day One staff by about 2 decades. But I bring a lot of valuable things, I think, because of my age, like obscure baby boomer cultural references and dad jokes and all of that kind of stuff. But on a serious note, there can be a bias in the machine about hiring people who are older because of practices in terms of automation that are not age inclusive. So recruiting and screening processes continue to be plagued by this kind of explicit discrimination and other mechanisms that disfavor older workers. In this session, which will be led by Carly Roskowski, she's Vice President of Financial Resilience at AARP, you'll hear some data-driven insights about how talent acquisition practices affect older applicants, as well as key recommendation for how to provide a level playing field for everybody. So please welcome Carly to the stage.
Thank you, Steve. Hello, good afternoon. Thanks so much for being here. As Steve mentioned, this is a really important topic, age-inclusive practices in automated hiring processes. Again, I'm Carly Roskowski with AARP, and I think I've spoken to some of you today, so thanks for stopping by our booth. And if you have any questions, I will be around afterwards, so please come by and we can chat. So aging is changing. 30 years ago, we probably wouldn't have seen an Instagram-style icon at age 70. We might not have seen someone in their 50s dancing and performing the way J-Lo does. And aging in the workplace is also changing. As employers struggle to fill open jobs and hire talent, they need to prosper and grow. They often neglect and even exclude a time-tested asset, older workers. So workers age 50 plus will make up a growing share of the labor force in the coming decade, and their expanding presence will be increasingly important to business operations and economic prosperity. So unfortunately, age discrimination is prevalent, especially in the workforce. Our value of experience research that we did last year in 2023 shows that 64% of people 40 and over have seen or experienced age discrimination in the workplace today. Age discrimination is also a top reason that is driving low confidence for older workers to find another job within 3 months. And America is experiencing a broad demographic shift. So by 2034, people 60 and older will outnumber those younger than 18 for the first time in our country's history, and the workforce is following. The US is struggling with labor market participation, with overall rates expected to decline to approximately 60% by 2030, compared to our current rate of 62.6%. However, the share and participation of older workers is projected to grow. Workers 75 and older represent the only age group of which labor force participation is projected to rise between now and 2030. In our most recent Workplace Trends survey, most believed that older workers face age discrimination in the workplace and that such discrimination is common. The research shows that about 2 in 3 adults aged 50 and older in the labor force, about 64%, think that older workers face age discrimination, and among them, all, or almost all, 90% believe that age discrimination against older workers is common in the workplace. And most of these numbers have remained consistent from the 3 different waves of research that we did, starting back in Q2 of 2022, with the last wave happening in Q3 of last year, 2023. Also, just over 1 in 10 continue to report that they've been passed up for a promotion or chance to get ahead because of their age. So growth and the importance of the 50-plus workforce. The labor force grew 21% over the last 25 years. What made up that growth? 50 and older workers increased 89%. They accounted for 93% of the total labor force growth between 1997 and 2022. And the number of workers younger than age 50 increased only 2%. For the first time in our nation's history, we have 5 generations in the workforce. So looking back at 1994, we had 3 generations. Now we have 5, which presents challenges for both employees as well as employers. The top 10 skills that we hear from employers, 8 of them are soft skills. Things like analytical thinking, critical thinking, curiosity and lifelong learning, resilience, flexibility, skills that normally older workers possess after decades of experience. And our research shows that older workers employ a growth mindset. There's a misconception that older workers don't want to learn new skills or be trained. They're just waiting to retire. Well, our research shows different. 54% are taking or have taken job-related skills training in the last 2 years. 43% take trainings to keep up with their skills for a better job performance. And 20% develop new skills to advance in their career. Most are satisfied with their job, and 89% say that a new job must give them the opportunity to use their skills and be challenged. Older workers also improve team performance. They strengthen resilience, elevates productivity, unlocks markets, sparks innovation. Like any diverse workforce, having mixed-age teams generate a productivity spillover effect. Our research also shows that 77% of all workers say that they value older colleagues for the skills and experience that they bring to the job. So I talked to some of you a little bit earlier about knowledge transfer and succession planning. Some of you have in your organizations a great amount of older workers, which is fantastic. So there are a few things, and I like to use the analogy around a recipe or making bread in this case. So you have 3 types of knowledge. The first is explicit. So this is easily observable stuff. Your list of clients, your org charts, etc. And this is the easiest knowledge to document. Then you have the implicit knowledge, sort of cracking the eggs, measuring the flour. This is how the explicit knowledge gets used in a business setting. Stuff like process documentation, policies, and your procedures. This is relatively easy to document, but is starting to get nuanced. And then you have tacit knowledge. It's gained from experience doing something. Stuff like how far to adjust a dial when something's not working. This is the hardest knowledge to document and where you should spend the most time. It's also important to transfer relationships where possible, to smooth the departure of trusted older workers who have a ton of experience and know a ton of people. Can they make introductions before they leave? Can they give the incoming person the lowdown on who to go to for what? Also talk about multiple types of intelligence. So if you think about fluid intelligence, which is the kind that most of us associate with being smart, it's speed of processing information, speed of remembering information. Think of how fast kids can play video games or card games, and they're processing all that information at top speed. Well, your fluid intelligence caps or peaks at age 20. But there are other types of intelligence. And it's true that fluid intelligence, when peaking at age 20, begins to decline in our 30s. However, it's by no means the only intelligence. If you look at executive functioning, peaking at age 29, concentration, 43, reading emotions, 48, learning new information at age 50, crystallized intelligence, which is best described as context. So it's the brain's ability to take new information and fit it into a structure, combine it with other information, understand the implications. Think of a leader having to make a difficult judgment call, or a manufacturing line worker anticipating mistakes in real time and avoiding them. That intelligence peaks at 60. This is just I'll put this up for a minute. If you haven't heard about our Employer Pledge program, when you think about AARP, you might think about our 38 million member base of consumers and us doing advocacy work across the country, serving the 50 plus and fighting for things like age discrimination. But we also have a B2B space and a program called the Employer Pledge program where thousands of organizations commit to an age-inclusive workforce. So if you want to check it out, you can sign our pledge. We have free educational resources. It's free to join. We do quarterly calls. We have topics that we discuss with employers across the country, things like workplace wellness, trends in the marketplace. And if you have any questions, please feel free to come by after. So talk a little bit about the automated hiring processes, challenges and opportunities. So our analysis reveals an inverse relationship between age-based language in job postings and employment of older workers in the company. So companies that have the lowest prevalence of age-based language in their postings have 51% greater representation of older workers in their workforce, whereas firms with relatively young workforces tend to have more age-biased language in their jobs descriptions. Things like recent college grad, digital native, high energy, words that might deter an older, experienced worker from even looking at the job or applying. So not everyone is on LinkedIn. The estimated age distribution of LinkedIn profiles suggests that over-reliance on social media for job advertisement and recruitment excludes large numbers of older workers. Although workers ages 55 and over make up 23% of today's labor market, they only represent about 14% of LinkedIn profiles. This accords with previous AARP unemployment survey results showing that only 22%, about 1 in 5 of unemployed workers ages 45 plus used online social networks to find a job. AARP has a job board. Employers can also connect with American Job Centers to participate in the Senior Community Service Employment Program, or CSEP. And CSEP was designed to help older workers update their skills and stay connected to the labor market. Career One Stop also offers an older worker program finder to help connect workers and employers looking for local opportunities. Employers are understandably reluctant to invest in skilling a worker that they expect to leave. However, Burning Glass Institute research indicates that even at age 69, the average worker is expected to stay in their current employer for an additional 4 years, or 1 to 3 years longer than an earlier career worker. So in other words, firms that may be even more likely to get a positive ROI on training older workers than from training their younger counterparts. And common negative stereotypes paint older workers as resistant to change and less committed to the job. And the facts, and as I mentioned earlier, our research tell a different story. 94% of older workers indicate that they would want to learn new skills with their employer's support. So if used intentionally, automation offers the opportunity to broaden the number of workers considered for a role. Employers may find success by weighting different job requirements based on their importance, rather than using default applicant tracking system filters to screen out those applicants who don't meet all the preferred qualifications. So to be successful in this part of the process, employers must have already taken the time to craft a job description that is reflective of their team's needs. Similarly, as companies perform audits and checks of their ATS systems for bias, they should include checks for age bias in addition to those for other protected classes. So instead of relying on degree requirements, you might want to use skills or knowledge that sets a worker needs for a role. Instead of placing an upper limit on range of experience, like maximum 10 years, advertise the salary band to find the right candidates. Instead of rejecting candidates with work history gaps, someone might have had to leave the workforce to care for a loved one, prioritize relevant experience, including from non-traditional roles. And instead of screening for titles, prioritize those who have taken on comparable job responsibilities. We have a guide at AARP called Say This, Not That, and it's a manager's guide to hiring. You can find it at aarp.org/employer. And it's a guide that helps you create a more age-inclusive hiring practice. So saying things like entry level instead of recent college grad, or listing specific skills and required proficiency level as opposed to digital native. And listing specific skills instead of tech savvy. Thinking about listing agile or creative thinker instead of fresh ideas, or adaptable instead of young. We have even synthesized the best practices into a templated hiring kit for you to customize and use throughout your organization. Untapped talent pathways can help employers fill critical roles and improve their age diversity. Creating transition pathways can bring in new talent to field as employers continue to struggle to fill jobs. It's a tight labor market, unemployment is still at historic lows, so drawing applicants from occupations with a high share of older workers enables firms to capitalize on ongoing demographic trends and to improve the age diversity of their workforces. So for example, if there's a job in your organization that tends to have older workers, in this example, it's secretaries and administrative roles that are filled 43% by older workers. You can look for positions where they have similar skills needed, things like insurance claims clerks or supervisors or office and admin workers. They might need a skill or two or an upskilling training, but it's a way to retain talent, keep them learning new skills, and satisfied and challenged in their job. So when we talk about building age-inclusive cultures and teams, we want to ditch the stereotypes. Examine your unconscious biases around age and observe how myths are proven wrong in your teams and across your organization. Lead with curiosity. Work to identify the intent and interest behind the attitudes and actions of those from other generations. Choose curiosity over judgment. And paying attention to casual ageism, would you make similar remarks about other aspects of identity? And push to work with people of different ages. Make age-diverse teams. Make multi-generational teams. Start an intergenerational ERG at your organization. Adopt a growth mindset. There are structural things you can do at your organization to help adding age to your DEI policies and strategies, evaluating and debiasing your recruiting processes, modeling age-inclusive management practices, and creating things like returnships or phased retirement programs. And from a cultural standpoint, building age-diverse teams, as I mentioned, whenever possible, and addressing intergenerational conflict if it arises. Make training and skilling available to all. And make sure to communicate that, especially to your mid or late career workers. We have a playbook for the inclusive hiring of later career workers that we have created with the Burning Glass Institute. If you didn't get a copy, there are a few left on our table outside, or you can take a picture of this QR code and get a digital version. Thank you so much. Look forward to talking to most of you afterwards. Thank you.